My wealthy, entitled in-laws disrespected and kicked me out of their house for being poor. Now 7 years later, they desperately want to reconnect after I became rich. But I refused. I'm 33, male, born and raised in the U.S. My parents were Indian immigrants, and they came here with next to nothing. My dad worked 16-hour days at a small restaurant they eventually owned. They barely made ends meet, but they never complained. They believed in hard work, doing what's right, and keeping your head down. I guess I got my work ethic from them. Straight out of college, I co-founded a software startup with some friends. We had no idea what we were doing at first. Just a bunch of broke kids trying to create something. It was rough. We lived off ramen and slept in the office some nights. No one was getting rich, but I loved it. I believed in what we were building. That's around the time I met E. We clicked from the start, met in college, and fell hard. She was different from the girls I dated before. Smart, ambitious, funny, and didn't care about how much money I made or where I came from. She came from a wealthier background. Her parents owned a chain of department stores, and they lived in a huge house, the kind of place with more rooms than they needed. E never made a big deal out of it, though. She wasn't caught up in their lifestyle. She didn't care about status. But of course, her parents did. The first time I met them, I could tell they didn't like me. It wasn't anything they said outright. At least not at first. But you could feel it in the way they looked at me. Like I wasn't good enough. Her father, R, gave me that polite but fake smile, asked a few shallow questions about my job, and then sort of dismissed me. Her mother, M, barely acknowledged me beyond a quick nod. I could tell I wasn't what they'd imagined for their daughter. I wasn't from a good family, with money, connections, or influence. Over the next few months, it became clear that they thought I was beneath them. They'd make these little comments whenever I was around. Like R would ask how my project was going, with this smug tone, like he didn't think my startup was a real job. "How long are you going to do this before you get a real career?" he asked once, with a chuckle. M would ask E in front of me, "Are you sure he's the one? You know, you could do a lot better." I took it, though. I loved E, and I figured if we stuck it out long enough, they'd come around. So I swallowed my pride every time they disrespected me. Then came the family dinner that changed everything. E had told me that her parents wanted to have my parents over for dinner. A way to get to know them better. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I thought, fine, maybe this is a step in the right direction. My parents didn't know all the details about how E's family treated me, but they knew enough to be cautious. Still, they were always kind, always hopeful things would get better. We all sat down at this massive dining table. You could probably fit 10 people at it, but there were just 6 of us. The conversation was awkward from the start. My dad, always trying to keep things light, talked about their restaurant. He was proud of what he and my mom had built, even though it wasn't much. "We've been running it for almost 20 years now," he said, smiling. "It's hard work, but it's honest." R leaned back in his chair, looked my dad up and down, and said, "A restaurant, huh? Must be tough. I guess you're used to working long hours for little pay." The room went silent. My mom, ever the diplomat, smiled and said, "It is tough, but we're happy with it. We've done well enough to give our kids a good life." R smirked. "Sure, but don't you think your son deserves more? I mean, look at the world today. It's all about connections, money, making the right moves. I'm sure you'd want more for him than what you've got." I saw my mom's smile falter, and my dad, who's usually calm and easygoing, clenched his fists on the table. They weren't rich, but they had given me everything they could. I felt my blood boiling. And then M chimed in. "I always told E she could marry into a family with real stability. Someone with the means to take care of her properly, not someone struggling." That was it. I couldn't sit there anymore and let them talk to my parents like that. "What the hell is your problem?" I said, leaning forward. "You think you're better than them because you've got money? They've worked harder than you ever have in your life." R stood up, his face red with anger. "You don't talk to me like that in my own house, boy. You think you're something special because you're running some little startup? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing compared to us." Before I could even process what was happening, E's brothers stood up, 2 of them. They grabbed me by the arms, and before I knew it, They were dragging me out of the dining room. He was yelling, telling them to stop, but no one listened. They pulled me down the hallway, through the front door, and threw me down the steps of their front porch. I hit the ground hard, and as I tried to get up, one of them kicked me in the ribs. "Stay out of our lives, you piece of trash," one of them spat before walking back inside. I could barely breathe. I lay there for a minute, stunned, while E rushed out after me. She was crying, apologizing over and over. I told her it wasn't her fault, but the pain and humiliation were unbearable. We went to the cops the next day, but they didn't take us seriously. E's family had connections, and it seemed like no one wanted to go against them. "It's a family dispute," one officer said, brushing it off like it was nothing. I was furious. They had assaulted me, disrespected my parents, and there was nothing I could do about it. E was devastated. She cut off her family completely after that. She chose me over them, even though it hurt her deeply. We got married a few months later in a small quiet ceremony with just a few close friends. E, trying to be the bigger person, invited her parents one last time. They refused. Her mother's final words to her were, "You'll regret this. You'll regret marrying a poor man." Fast forward 7 years, my startup took off. We weren't Facebook or anything, but we'd made it. We hit a few million in valuation, and I was officially a millionaire. It wasn't just about the money, though. I had proven to myself and to everyone that I could build something. My parents retired, sold the restaurant for a decent amount, and my sister was about to finish med school. Life was good. Then, out of nowhere, E's parents reached out. They had heard about my success through mutual friends. Suddenly, they wanted to reconnect, like nothing had ever happened. They sent messages, asking to meet up, acting like we were a long-lost family who had just drifted apart by accident. I didn't trust it for a second. E didn't either, but she missed her family. So against my better judgment, we agreed to meet them for dinner. I went in with low expectations, but even then, I wasn't prepared for how it would play out. We met at a fancy restaurant, one of those places where the prices aren't even listed on the menu. They acted all friendly at first, asking how things were going, talking about how much they'd missed E. But it didn't take long for the old smugness to creep back in. "So," R said, leaning back in his chair, "I see you've done well for yourself. I guess I misjudged you back then." He said it like he was giving me a compliment, but there was this edge to his voice. Like he still didn't think I was worthy of their daughter, but he had to acknowledge my success. He asked them, point blank, why they had treated us the way they did. Why they had cut her off for marrying me. M waved it off, like it was no big deal. "We were just concerned for you, dear," she said. "We didn't want you to marry into a difficult life. But it all worked out, didn't it?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like they were trying to rewrite history. Like the years of mistreatment and insults didn't matter because I'd made some money now. Then M added, "It's time to move on from the past. We're family after all." That was the last straw. "Family?" I said, my voice low but shaking with anger. "You threw me out of your house? Your sons beat me up? You cut your daughter off because I wasn't rich enough for you? And now, you want to pretend like none of that happened?" R's face hardened. "You should be thanking us," he said, his voice cold. "Look where you are now. You proved us wrong, but don't forget, we were trying to protect E. You got lucky. You'll always be beneath us." I stood up. "We're done here," I said, grabbing E's hand. She didn't hesitate. We both turned to leave, but R wasn't finished. "You'll regret this too," he said, his voice dripping with entitlement. "We tried to make amends, but you're too arrogant to accept it. You think because you've got a little money now, you can act like you're above us? You wouldn't be where you are without E." I froze, my back to him, trying to stay calm. I could feel E squeezing my hand, telling me to just keep walking, but I couldn't let him have the last word. I turned around slowly, looking him dead in the eye. "I didn't build my life for your approval," I said, my voice steady but filled with all the anger I had kept in for years. "You never gave me a chance because I wasn't born into wealth like your precious family, but everything I've earned, I've done it on my own. You had nothing to do with it. And the only reason I've gotten through all of this is because your daughter believed in me when no one else did. You don't get to take credit for any of it." R's face was red, and for a second, I thought he was going to lunge across the table. But he just stood there, glaring, as M tried to smooth things over. "This isn't how we wanted it to go," she said, all fake smiles. "We just want to put the past behind us." E finally spoke up, her voice shaking but firm. "You don't get to put the past behind you just because you want to," she said. "You treated us like garbage, like we didn't matter. And now, just because he's successful, you want to pretend it's all okay? It's not. You don't get to be in our lives now. We're done." We walked out of that restaurant, and as soon as we hit the fresh air, it felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders. He squeezed my hand tighter, and we didn't look back. But that wasn't the end. I knew it wouldn't be. Over the next few weeks, things started to unravel again. Investors were backing out of deals, clients were acting strange, and there were rumors flying around about my company's financial health. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, but then I found out from a friend in the industry what was really happening. E's parents were pulling strings behind the scenes, using their connections to sabotage me. Again. It was all happening just like before. Except this time, I wasn't some broke kid they could push around. I had connections now, too. My company was solid, and I had people backing me who knew the value of what we were doing. I reached out to a few key investors, people I had built real relationships with over the years, and explained what was happening. Then I did something E's family never expected. I fought back. Quietly, I started gathering evidence. It took a few weeks of careful planning, but I was patient. I had got some emails, recorded conversations, testimonies from people they tried to influence. It wasn't just business sabotage, it was a personal attack. They wanted to ruin me, and I wasn't going to let it happen. When I had everything I needed, I filed 2 defamation lawsuits, one from the company side and one from my personal side. And let me tell you, that shook them. R&M never expected me to hit them where it hurt, their reputation. They tried to bury it, tried to settle it quietly, but I wasn't backing down. The case dragged on, and the public exposure of it started to eat away at them. In the end, they lost. Big time. The settlement cost them nearly half of their net worth. The stores they prided themselves on, the empire they had built, it was all in jeopardy. And more than that, their name, their standing in the community, was ruined. Everyone knew what kind of people they really were. The family with all the money and connections had been exposed for the manipulators they were. As for E and me, we walked away stronger than ever. My parents, who had always supported us, stood by us the entire time. They never said, "I told you so," even though they could have. They just kept being the good, hard-working people they always were. They treated E like their own daughter, something her own parents couldn't do. We moved on. My company survived the attacks, and we came out even better on the other side. E never looked back. She had found her real family, the one that loved her for who she was, not for the money she could bring in. As for her parents, they live in their big, empty house, still pretending like they're above everyone else, but their world is a lot smaller now. They don't have the same power or influence they once did. And every now and then, I hear from people that they still talk about me like I'm the one who ruined their family. But here's the thing. I didn't ruin anything. They did. They ruined it the moment they thought money made them better than everyone else. The moment they decided their pride was worth more than their daughter's happiness. I'm just glad we got out when we did. And if you're still reading this, maybe hit subscribe. You never know when you'll need a good story about entitled people getting what's coming to them.